Good evening, and welcome to Millis After Dark, the special edition. I'm Joyce Boyardi. Tonight's topic is the final proposal for the Millis playing fields. My guests are Charles Aspinwall, Town Administrator, Andrea Wagner, the Chair of the Board of Selectmen and the Fields Committee, Dave Baker, and Rich Nichols. Rich Nichols and Dave Baker, Field Committee members. Thank you so much for all of you for joining us this evening.
Thanks, Joyce.
Thank you.
Our goal tonight is to answer some lingering questions and provide the information and the latest information on this plan, which is scheduled to be discussed at the upcoming fall town meeting. I'd like to begin with a look at the latest plans. I understand there are some changes. Dave, would you mind walking us through the latest design proposals for the field?
Thank you, Joyce. CDM, our consultant, was tasked with laying out the fields, and I would say the biggest hurdle was wetland delineation. So it was one of the first things they did. The largest single feature of the fields is the track, and the lines on the plan that you're seeing in the upper right-hand corner are the wetland flags, and then a 50-foot line and a 100-foot buffer from those wetlands. And that really drove the placement of the track and field inside the track, and then what would fit after that was laid out. So that's more of the engineering. This is more of the pretty picture. The track and field is a 6-lane track, not an 8, and it would have bleachers and assorted facilities. And it moves it moves away from the abutting residential properties and the wetlands and moves towards the high school. After that facility is sited, the only room left was for the softball field that you see above. That's a girls' softball field, possibly Little League. But again, the problem was the wetland edge that's shown here as the trees on the upper side of the slide. So this was really the high school property, high school, middle school property, and what would fit on that location. One of the other issues was with this type of facility, right now Millis does not ever hold track meets at the track, and so we kind of schedule one event at a time, but the most desirable plan would be able to have multiple events, and so parking was a premium. So in this slide as well, you see an additional row of double parking in the rendering. Because the softball field is going over what is today would be considered the high school baseball field. It's also known as a home run derby because it's pretty short to the outfield. We did not want to lose any fields anywhere, so the high school size facility was moved over and located in Town Park. And this slide shows you Town Park. Just to get you oriented, at the very bottom of the screen, you can just see a box that labels that as Millis High School, and that's the access road to the high school. The high school regulation size baseball field is going over what is today the parking lot for the tennis courts themselves. And you can see in the upper part of the slide, Sisto Field in the upper right-hand corner and the existing Little League baseball fields in Town Park. Also, you'll notice the bandstand in about the center of the rendering. The new playground that was just built, and then in the left-hand edge is the Clyde Brown School and the parking lot on Spring Street. So this slide is showing you after displacing it from the high school property, showing you the high school regulation baseball field now located at the Town Park. And then because the only place that would really fit, again, kind of being the second biggest facility feature, it required the tennis courts and basketball courts to be relocated. In this rendering, it's 4 regulation tennis courts today. Our tennis courts are not regulation for sporting events, and we've had to go elsewhere like Glen Ellen and other places. So this would provide 4 tennis courts for the public and for school tennis matches. And there are 2 outdoor basketball kind of multi-surface fields, play surfaces there. The rec department had been asking for a second one, and this proposal shows two, where there's today one. Next slide is what is known as the recreation field behind the Clyde Brown School and behind the mobile station. That's the mobile station on your left-hand edge, and the parking lot coming in off Spring Street. This is a proposed synthetic turf field. This is where the flag footballers kind of play, and recreation soccer plays. It is a recreation field, and it's taking a heavy, heavy beating as far as overuse and a kind of an inability to maintain it, because there's always somebody wanting to use it, so there's really no time to rest. So this is not a full-size field, but it's and the lines are shown just to show you what could be done, but I think the intent here is to put the synthetic surface in there and run flag football and other things side to side or top to bottom on the slide, and not really stripe it, but have flexibility to use it any number of ways. And this is a rendering of kind of the high school, middle school, town park, and Clyde Brown Rec overall campus, and where some of these facilities I just showed you in color are laid out. The right-hand side is the high school with the track and the softball field and the additional parking. Then the center of the slide is the baseball field, the tennis courts, and two outdoor basketball surfaces, and then down at the lower right is the Clyde Brown School and that rec field. The Fields Committee did look at Oak Grove Farm. I'll show you. This is the field that was proposed at the Oak Grove Farm behind the farmhouse, with Exchange Street passing by on the top of the slide. This is not part of the warrant. This has not been included, but it was one of the fields that we studied. So,
Can you tell me why the changes came about?
excuse me. Specific changes?
Yeah, because this isn't the original. This is not the original plan, correct?
It's tweaking to the original plan. I think the exercise for the consultant was to locate that biggest facility and where it would fit. And after they flagged the wetlands and did their delineation of the wetlands, they felt the only place that they could fit it was, overlaying the existing. If you look at it's not a very good copy of it, but the original, you can see the old track and the new track in the right where the wetland 50-foot and 100-foot lines are at the right edge. You can just see the shadows of the original cinder track. But to answer your question,
I guess that my question is more like the Oak Grove area. That was originally in the plan, and you just mentioned that it's no longer in the plan.
Yes.
Can you explain to me why that has changed?
The Fields Committee, the Oak Grove Farm Commission has the care and custody of the Oak Grove Farm, and the Board of Selectmen received a letter from the Oak Grove Farm Commission asking for additional time to look into issues like historical. I'll switch back to that slide while we're talking about it. The farmhouse is there in the upper right. That's the historical societies. The property itself is the Oak Grove Farm Commission. The Historical Society is not in favor of this and had communicated that to the Oak Grove Farm Commission. The Fields Committee was recommending to the Selectmen that this be built. We think it's important, but the Oak Grove Farm Commission are appointed by the town moderator, and the commission communicated to the Selectmen that they were not interested at this time, and because we were trying to finalize the scope and the budgets and the numbers, the Selectmen chose to take it off, and so it's not on the warrant 18.
Is this something that you're hoping to propose at a later date?
I think
I know that.
apologize.
Mike.
The Fields Committee was charged with kind of a master plan approach to the town, and not to the Selectmen, and not really, for better or for worse, concerning ourselves with jurisdictional lines, but really answering some questions. And I have it. The Selectmen's charge to the committee was to identify the existing condition inventory, identify the needs and the demand for user groups and all possible locations. So I think the Oak Grove Farm parcel, it was planned to be grass. Because it was grass and not synthetic turf, it would have taken 2 years to come online, 1 year to build it, 2 growing seasons before it would have been ready for use. It was decided to take it off of this warrant effort. I don't think it's gone. It certainly could be brought back at a future date,
Okay.
but it is not on this warrant, and it's one of other possible field locations in town that we studied.
So it could be something that could be visited later on.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank
you
you.
very much. Andrea, the Fields Committee has spent months reviewing and discussing many options. How did the committee arrive at this final design plan?
Initially, at the initial stages of the charge to the first Fields Committee, we identified all the different locations, whether they be town-owned or current fields that fields could be placed in. And we had the law firm for the town look into the ownership and what kind of restrictions were on there. So we narrowed it down to really, based upon property restrictions and other concerns, the town park, the Oak Grove, and the Clyde Brown. So we looked into each one of those, as well as, the Cassidy Field. So when the town voted to have the consultant come in to look at those more in depth to see where fields could go, the Cassidy Field, which is across the street, across Route 115 from Oak Grove, there were some concerns there with wetlands and the ability to place fields there. So that was kind of taken off the table there. The other properties are, there's properties, I believe, on Pleasant Street. There's a Village Street property, but each one of those had some type of property restriction to it. So the important thing was not to remove any of the fields that we presently have, but to address the need for more fields and to improve the fields we currently have. So that's how we ended up with the high school area, what we're calling the stadium area, the town park, the Clyde Brown, and then the Fields Committee recommendation for Oak Grove.
Thank you. Now, is there room for any additional changes on this at this point, or is this the final plan?
I think this is the final plan that's being placed on the warrant. Just to and to kind of build on what Dave said with regard to the Oak Grove, the Fields Committee recommended what Dave has presented here, as well as the Oak Grove, but it was the selectmen who, based upon their feedback from the Oak Grove Farm Commission, the Historical Commission, and some changes that would have had to have been done, remove that portion of it. So this is the plan. This is the plan that will be on that warrant.
So there won't be any changes. This is it.
Correct.
this
Unless somebody were to make a change at the town meeting, but this is the plan that's going forward.
That's going to go on. All right, very good. Before we get into the discussion of the costs of the new fields, I'd like to talk a little bit about the upkeep and maintenance of the current fields. What does it cost to maintain each of the fields at the high school, at the town park, and now what does the maintenance involve?
Okay, I'm going to do my best to try and answer that question, but I believe the current maintenance cost for all of those fields would be approximately $118,000. And the maintenance is undertaken right now by the DPW, the school, and the rec funds from the rec department, as well as the baseball, softball, and also a lot of volunteer effort goes into that. That's not really captured in that number, but that's the cost of it right now.
And does what does the maintenance involve, as far as I know? You mentioned that the three entities are the ones that have been taking care of it and volunteer, but who will be taking care of it once this is implemented?
The expectation is to have a centralized, one central group for maintenance that handles maintenance and scheduling. I don't know that it's been finally determined, but it would probably be the town or the DPW that does that.
Rich,
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Would you be able to review the materials needed for the artificial turf, for the fields, and the materials for the track? And what would be used and how often it could be used?
Okay. The artificial turf right now is going to be done with the standard turf material, and then you can do different infill materials, because I know after the NBC study, there was concerns that were raised.
I'm glad you brought that up.
And so the CDM, who was mentioned in that, actually had responded, and that they came back, and so far the EPA has not determined that there is any issues associated with the tire crumbs that they're using. And I also today had gone online and looked up several other things which came up with the same type of findings, that they agree that it's something that should be looked at. And at this point in time, they haven't found anything. Now, we're not necessarily married to a tire crumb infill material. There are other alternatives.
And what are those other alternatives?
There's a virgin material that they can put in. They can also use a natural organic material, which they can put in as the infill. With the organic materials, obviously, they'll break down over time, and that would be a bit of an issue. Plus, they'd have to be replaced.
What would the life expectancy be?
That one I would not, they haven't gone over that with us, so I can't really speak to that. In one of the next presentations, that was one of the things that we would go through, is different infill. And up till a week ago, the tire crumb issue is not necessarily an issue. So,
Joyce, could I expand on that for a second?
Absolutely.
I think that NBC study is important to note, and that's responded to by the Synthetic Turf Association, is that the NBC story did not, they were highlighting for unfortunate people who had developed cancer who were goalies, but they came in that article, in that piece, and said there was no evidence linking it, and the Synthetic Turf Association is provided, and it's at the conclusion of this PowerPoint, which will be online, over 60 studies and countless examples of the tire crumb fill material being stable and not producing toxic things. We understand that, people who are against the fields and the cost are going to, use these types of studies, but even the NBC study story itself said there was no data backing this up. It was just an unfortunate coincidence, and attached to this PowerPoint are websites where there's additional information and additional studies that have been produced over, that all point to quite a different conclusion than that story. So the Fields Committee has asked our consultant to educate us about alternatives, and the pros and cons of those alternatives will be looked at, but the tire crumb infill material is a standard industry practice and has been quite successful and stable.
Now, let me ask you this. The study was done by the association that actually manufactures and puts out these artificial turfs,
and
correct?
can I jump in on that? So that was one of the things that today, because I knew this question was going to come up,
Would you mind meld with me?
I looked online. So California did a study on it, and they came up with the same thing. They also came up with a finding that for the skin infection hazard, because that's another thing that people have brought up as an issue, fewer bacteria detected on artificial turf compared to natural turf. This was true for MRSA and other staphylococcal capable of infecting humans. And we've heard that also from other towns, that they do have treatments for them. We can spray them. In other towns, they have not needed to do this. The natural rain and UV light actually cleans the fields. So that's another thing same thing that people had brought this up as a concern, but when it all boils down, it doesn't seem like it is that big a deal. Not to discount it.
Correct. I understand. I do also know that L.A. and New York have done some studies where they've tabled and pushed away for the synthetic turfs, that they don't feel there's enough evidence one way or the other to be able to say that it's going to be safe or not safe, so that they've tabled ideas of using artificial turf. Well, I do have a question, and I know this is a what if, but what if in 5 years, what if this plan is approved, and then in 5 years, it's proven that the product is a carcinogenic? What do we do then? Has that been?
Well, I don't think, I'd like to answer.
Thank you, Dave.
I think one thing that you have to understand is that this project cost includes a lot of subsurface drainage work and subbase before you get to the carpet and the crumb infill material. So in the event that, this response from the Synthetic Turf Council, which is clearly an industry, organization, cites over 60 technical studies. If it turned out that all these previous studies were wrong, and you could remove the carpet and the crumb material and replace it with a different carpet and different infill material, but all that benefit of the drainage systems and the subbase would still be, positive. The track would still be there, the lighting, the concessions, the stands, and things like that. So it just in the studies we've looked at and the explanation from the consultants that every 10 to 12 years, based on use, you're going to have to budget for replacing the carpet level surface of these fields. That could be done. I would think Mr. Aspel is probably more of an expert in this, but there would be some liability to, through a probably class action lawsuit. But I really want to stress that and I did go back and watch the NBC story, and then I read some of these other studies, and, I was prepared for that question tonight, and put together a list of websites where more information is available for people to make that. But again, I think if you're against it, you're probably against it. And I think there's a preponderance of evidence in studies that say there has not been a problem.
I may be speaking for some of the townspeople, and I apologize to any of you if I am, but I think one of the concerns, well, for one thing, people don't like change. We all know that. Change is something people don't like. I think another thing might be the fact that the cost, the burden on taxpayers. There are so many other things that need to be addressed, our school system, the buildings. I think that, but I think it's the unknown and how much this is really going to cost the taxpayers.
We have those slides as well.
Right.
And I would add something to Rich's comment when your question on maintenance is one of the things the Fields Committee kind of came to certain decisions and certain beliefs at the beginning of the process. One of them was maintenance, no matter how much money we were putting in, and we all agree that there's not enough from the schools, not enough from recreation, not enough from the DPW. But the bigger problem, the underlying problem, is the overuse of the fields. And so I kind of think the question is a little backwards. It's not how have you been maintaining it? It's like there aren't enough facilities to spread out the demand so that you can maintain it. And I think that's why we're advocating the synthetic fields in a few locations to provide that kind of relief, to let the maintenance budget start to, renovate the other facilities.
Is there special equipment needed for this, for the cleaning and the prepping for each game?
On the turf fields, they actually have a broom type of thing that goes ahead, and on some of the proposals, they've actually had the manufacturer, the installer, supply that, and it would be like a rent-to-own thing. So they provide it, they take care of the maintenance. They actually, and I'm not sure in our proposal it's set up, they actually have it set for maintenance for 10 years, and then you own the equipment. So there is a special broom that they brush the stuff with.
Okay. And who will be doing that?
That would be the field's maintenance personnel.
And do we know who the field's maintenance personnel are?
That's part of the overall charge of the committee is we're trying to develop a team to have that work done by.
So would that be a collaboration between the schools, the town? Who would that be? The recreation department, schools, and town personnel?
Sure, Joyce. The plan that we've developed overall has called for centralized maintenance and centralized scheduling. We don't have all the Ts crossed and the Is dotted with that this person is going to do this thing. But over the next few months, if this project is to go forward, the selectmen and the school committee will have to meet and iron that out, and that will be reflected in the budget, the upcoming budget. So we have to determine what the best, different towns have done things different ways. Needham does it one way, Milford does it another way. We're trying to
Medway.
pick the best. We visited 5 different towns to learn how they maintain their fields, how organizationally they have addressed their needs. So we're going to take that information that we've used, if the project is to go forward, and develop a plan that will be presented to town meeting
So you're going to have the plan by town meeting?
by the May town meeting.
May town meeting.
If the project is to go forward.
Um,
Now, mind you, we will not, there's no time, we're not under the gun here. The projects will take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years to 2 to 3 years to complete. So we do have a period of time to make the adjustments, to go to town meeting, to discuss how we best can maintain and staff these positions and organizationally change the structure, because there is no, we're not under the gun to have to do that right now for this town meeting.
So you're just I'm a little confused then. You're hoping for this to pass at town meeting, but you won't have those?
Joyce,
Yes, Dave.
town meeting is to render a decision on the capital cost for these fields. One of the things that the vendors who build these types of facilities offer is maintenance for a 5-10-year period, and as Rich said, that sometimes at the end of that life cycle, if you build that into the cost, you own the equipment and the DPW or somebody starts to use it. What Charlie is saying is, from town meeting, if the proposal passes and we go into full construction drawings and bidding it out and scheduling the work in those intervening months, the nitty-gritty details of this central scheduling and central maintenance entity will be fleshed out. There's been discussions of an enterprise fund to collect user fees and gate receipts and gifts and donations and things like that. And it's clear, and that's something that, again, in previous Fields Committee reports stated, it's clear that alone the school committee can't do it, alone the DPW can't do it, and alone the rec department can't do it. And because of the explosive increase of users, even if those departments had the budgets, the fields are just getting beat up.
No, I understand. So these three, the school, the town, and the recreation department, are in agreement to discuss the scheduling, and are they all willing to combine their efforts?
Yes.
So it's not that one is saying, I don't want it, one's saying, I don't want it, and another saying, I don't.
No,
So you don't pose that. That doesn't seem to be a big problem.
No, the entire approach from day one has been a town-wide solution for a town-wide problem, not a school problem, not a rec department problem. You know, Chris Fogarty and the rec department needed another basketball court because of the popularity of summer basketball. The Clyde Brown Field has 300-plus kids playing flag football on it, and no maintenance program can keep up with the pitter-patter of little feet.
Correct.
And the schools have a track that hasn't been able to be used for 15 years, and everybody is cognizant of the fact, because of the jurisdictional lines of the school property versus town park, that the only way to solve it is to solve it global.
And Dave, if I can jump in also, the youth baseball and soccer also are on board with that, and they're willing to contribute to that also.
Okay.
So
Now I have a question about the natural fields, the natural turf fields. How will those be maintained? Will that be, again, the three? Okay.
It would be
All
the
right.
same maintenance group, and it would be.
Okay.
And just to speak to one point, the town has been doing work on maintenancing, so it's not like they have been ignoring it. They've been doing
The best that they
the
can
best they can, but
with what we have.
And the same thing, it's not just what we have, but it goes to the,
Yeah,
use.
Okay.
it's definitely not what we have. It's the use, it's the
Correct.
overuse, and it's the inability to
So
keep
the
up.
timetable for this is 6 months to 2 years to get this rolling?
Maybe
To get,
The Clyde Brown School field could be done, they say, within 6 to 8 months from the time it's appropriated. Construction would take a lesser period of time than, say, the high school field would, which is a more complicated process.
So we can do this in stages?
Right.
And would all the money have to be approved at town meeting in order to be able to do this in stages? Or could we approve certain fields at town meeting, or is it an all or nothing?
It's one question. It's a one question for field improvements. It's a debt exclusion, not an increase to the tax rate, but it's 5.5 million, yes.
How much?
5.5 million.
Okay.
And part of that is there's also an advantage to cost for having these projects together. So if you do it onesies, then it can.
Right. Both on the design and the construction, you'll get efficiencies by doing it as one. The implementation may be one after the other, but designing them, hiring one contractor will save ultimately.
Now, what was the original estimation for cost?
At one point, we were up in the $7.5 million range when we were looking at adding in Oak Grove Farm and in doing potentially Redover and some of those others. That was, again, the process of hiring CDM as the consultant was they did a conceptual design without any data, and then in order to fine-tune that design, the most recent contract with CDM said, go out and flag the wetlands, go out and survey the property, go out and do geotechnical borings at the locations where you're going to have a footing for a big light pole or something along those lines so that you can fine-tune your numbers. And the 7.5 was a worst-case scenario, and we've been coming down from that projection ever since. And the selectmen, after taking the Oak Grove Farm article off, put a $5.5 million warrant article in.
If I can just clarify that just a little bit.
You sure
When we
can.
had that presentation, when the Fields Committee presented to the Board of Selectmen their recommendations, that price, I think the cost of that was approximately 7 or 7.2 or somewhere in that neighborhood. And that included the Oak Grove Farm field behind the farmhouse. It included a 25% contingency, and it included lights at the Clyde Brown. I believe those are the three things, the additional things it included. So when that presentation was made to the selectmen, and then the selectmen at their subsequent meeting had to decide whether to put something on the warrant, and if so, what, it went to 5.5. The contingency was dropped to a more realistic 10% contingency. Oak Grove Farm was removed, and I believe the only additional change was the lights to the Clyde Brown was removed.
So a 10% contingency as
Instead
opposed
of
to a 5?
25.
But I thought at one time there was talk of bringing it down to a 5% contingency. Is that not correct? Okay. All right. See? So can you break down the numbers for each project, beginning with the high school?
I can.
If someone else would rather, that's
No.
fine with me.
No, that's fine. The high school, which would include, all right, this is the
Baseball
high
field,
school. This is high school, football field, the track, the concession and restrooms, the girls softball field, but also the town park, which would be the boys baseball diamond, which,
Flip to.
I'm sorry, the boys baseball diamond, the moving of the tennis courts, and the basketball courts.
the stadium complex with restrooms,
Yes,
concession stand,
correct.
press box
Yes,
bleachers,
yes. Girls softball, which is up to the left. That,
and the
the
field
additional
upkeep
parking.
and stadium cleaning.
Right. So the
I think those are the
5.5 includes everything at the high school property, everything at the town park property, and everything behind the Clyde Brown School.
Right, but to break it out.
But can you break it
Yeah,
out
so-
for those three places so the
For-
town people know where the money's going?
Yes, for
We
the
just-
high
yeah.
school and the town park combined, it is 4,121,000. For the Clyde Brown, it's 871,200. And then there's some administration or, like, we call them administrative type costs that would be split among the two projects, such as the design cost, the construction administration, and the engineering for 467,700. If you're asking me to break it out between the high school, and the town park, I can't do that off the cuff because I can't. But what I can tell you is that the combination of those two is 4.121.
Okay. Can you tell me the cost as far as moving the current basketball and tennis courts to the up to the land behind the bandstand and along the drive past the main office of the high school?
Yes, what that involves would be.
Is that part of the 5.1?
It is, yes. 5.5.
Five.
Excuse me, 5.5, thank you.
And
Yeah, it is.
it is.
So there's no additional cost to that? Okay, great. And there's a field behind the Clyde Brown School.
Mhm.
Even with no scoreboard and no lights, what would the cost associated with that be?
$871,200.
Okay. And are there also replacement costs for the artificial turf fields, both for the surface materials and the underfield materials? And how much would that cost?
Not in the capital budget. That would be in the facilities department to be created, so that the 10-year replacement is not included in the capital budget.
But we did do a study, we ran through it and figured out the numbers, and the replacement cost for the synthetic turf carpet was included in that, in our run-through of the numbers.
And what's the number?
I don't have that with me. That would be,
I think. Sorry.
Maybe we'll come back to
That'd
that.
be great. Let me grab that.
But, by the way, all these previous studies that have this detail are online on Millis.
Millis.net fields.
Thank you. Did you get that? Millis.net
Millis.net.
Fields.
/ field study.
Okay.
So they individual breakout of each one of those pieces that led to this consolidated number are all there
Now
from
there's
CDM.
Okay, I apologize for interrupting. There's been news about Medway, and they're faced right now with a 2.2, I might be talking wrong, but approximately $2.2 million to replace their fields they had the synthetic fields. Have you visited that at all? Have you talked to them at
Yeah,
all?
that was, if I might, that was more than just the replacement. What they chose to do, they were building a new synthetic turf field, and they chose to replace the carpet at an existing field at the same time to get the economies of scale of the contractor already being there. But it was not just carpet replacements. It was included a brand-new synthetic turf field. So I think they have, 4, Jim, now? They have 4, we have none.
Oh, no, I'm just asking, because you know that people are going to ask. So
It was
if
in
we
the
can...
paper the other day, the same article that was about the Millis Fields presentation to the selectmen was the same day they were talking about their ribbon cuttings, I guess, over there.
Have you folks talked to them at all, Medway at all? What towns did you visit? You said that there were 5 towns that you visited?
Milford, Needham,
Norwood.
Rentham, Norwood. 4.
Okay, all right. And they're happy with what they have? They like how it's holding up?
You're asking me? Yes.
I'm asking anyone.
They do. They all manage it a little bit differently. Rentham in particular rents out their fields. They have the capacity to do so, and so they get some additional revenue from doing that. Norwood's field is so heavily used that they don't have the ability to rent out time for private groups. So we have not baked into our numbers any new revenue that might come as a result of us renting it out, but that is a potential possibility.
Now, what about user fees? Those will obviously go up for the townspeople, or will those not go up, or will there be a sliding scale, or what if somebody can't afford? Will there be some form of funds that they can then tap into so that these kids can play?
There was, Joyce, there was a discussion amongst the committee as to how to address the additional funds that are needed to better maintain what we already have and to properly maintain the new fields if they do go forward. So there was a range of options that were discussed with respect to increasing the town appropriation, but then also increasing the user fees for those participants that are using the field per sport. So the committee did not come up with a specific dollar amount. The amounts that we saw in other communities ranged anywhere from $15 to $70. So we're not going to be as high as $70. We know that. But we do think that to properly maintain our existing facilities and to properly maintain any new facilities, we do have to institute and share the cost by increasing the town appropriation for maintenance and also increasing user fees.
What are the current user fees? Does anyone know what a child has to pay?
Well, they're all different depending on whether you're talking about rec baseball or youth soccer or the school fees. So they're all being looked at as far as what maybe a portion of them can be repurposed to this maintenance outfit, but what still needs to stay to that organization for their other overhead and their other costs.
And I can speak to
Rich has-
a couple of the clubs shared. The Millis Soccer Club, they're at $65, which is very low per child.
So what will that go up to?
Well, that would go up to whatever the increase is decided on. So, I mean, that's,
I know, but I think if you're asking the townspeople to vote for something, they need to have to know, they kind of want to know what their costs are going to be so that they can feel better educated whether they want to be in favor of something or not.
Go ahead.
Joyce, if you like some breakdown of the individual items, the track and field site prep and removing the existing track is $114,000. At the high school football/soccer artificial turf field, and with its drainage system, it's $785,000. The track and field pavement is $351,000. Fencing, $57,000. Field lighting, $400,000. Scoreboard, $26,500. Bleachers, $425,000. Pathways, $68,000.
Those are the costs that you're saying it's going to cost to do those.
This is all part of the $5.5 million.
Correct, but I'm talking user fees, like if somebody's already paying $65.
And I can go back to that. So, unfortunately, what you're asking me to answer is a question that
You can't
is still in the
answer.
process of being worked out. So, when we go ahead and Charlie did a spreadsheet which did have the range, which went from, I think, 17 to, how much was that, Charlie, that went up and down?
15 to 70.
Well, the range in other towns is 15 to 70. If we're going to make some suppositions here, some assumptions. If the town does increase its appropriation by $50,000 or $75,000, then the user fee range would be somewhere between $35 and $55
Okay.
per participant.
I think it's just fair to let the people know so that they can go into town meeting with a little bit of education as to what it would cost them.
Right, and I think that the expectation is that the cost to maintain over the course of the replacement life is going to increase over what we do now, realizing that the maintenance that we do now isn't keeping up with the demand. So it's not really doing what we want it to do, yet we're spending money on it. But the important thing to understand is that the town expects that that increased maintenance cost is going to be borne by probably a town contribution in the way of the budget, but also an increased user fee. So we can't say, hey, the user fee, when these fields go online, is going to be $50 per player per
No,
sport.
but if you could say to
Can't do it.
somebody that it might be 10% or 15% more than they're paying, I think then people can do the math. But with the unknown, it's kind of hard for somebody to say, gee, I'm in favor of this.
Mm-hmm.
I understand, but two things. We do have the debt budget and the cost per household for the $5.5 million debt exclusion. That we do have tonight.
You
Yes,
do. I'd
do.
like to hear that.
But you're talking about maintenance, so to answer your maintenance question,
Right.
one of the things that we have to do in working with the school committee and the rec department and the existing baseball leagues and things like that is if this department is taking over some of your maintenance responsibilities because you outsource it or hire a private contractor, that money is being estimated by this fields committee and the group at the moment to say, well, here's what it costs today, here's what these different departments are putting in to maintain fields today. That's not enough. Here's what, if you add in budgeting for new equipment to fluff the fields and treat the fields and all that stuff that some of these other towns do and some of these other towns don't do. Here's the new maintenance number. What's the delta? We're working towards lowering that delta and also making sure that the users of the fields would pay that delta, not the people who have been asked to pass a debt exclusion but never use the field. So it's still, I understand people want certainty, but it's still a work in progress to say on the maintenance realignment exactly what that's going to translate into. Charlie's done some range studies to say, well, if the town put in $50,000, a user fee would be X, or if the town put in $20,000, a user fee would be X. That's where we are right now. But it's not that we haven't gotten a new number, and we don't know where we are today. But it is something that doesn't need to be decided before the town meeting vote. The debt numbers are here,
Okay,
and we're happy to share those.
thank you. We don't have a lot of time. We probably have about 10 minutes left to the show before I have to say goodbye. And there's some important questions that I still have to ask. The funding. I'd like to have some information about how you plan on funding it, including the cost of borrowing and what it means to the average taxpayer. And what are some of the options that the town may have to fund this? Would there be a 20-year payment plan similar to the other town projects? And as well as one other question about the Community Preservation Act fund. I understand there's also been talk about increasing from the 1% to the 3%. So if you could address those, Mr. Aspinwall.
Sure, Joyce. The cost of the debt exclusion in year one, based on an average single-family home that's valued at $340,000, is $148.26. So the cost per thousand, if your home is worth less or more than 340, is 44 cents per thousand. That's 44 cents per thousand. In year 20, that would decline to 28 cents per thousand, or $95.44. So the average over the 20 years is $121.85 per thousand.
Okay.
I'm sorry, $121.85 per average single-family home. Excuse me.
Have you thought about state funding or private funding? Have you looked at grants? Is there anywhere other than from the taxpayers this money can come from?
We've looked at grants. We have actually received from through Representative Linsky's office a $50,000 grant that could be used to pay for a portion of this study. That's to be determined by the Board of Selectmen at a later date. But other than that, other towns, I would note, had either a benefactor. Needham had a benefactor that paid $5 million out of their $6.5 million project.
Okay.
Someone who was wealthy who lived in their town. Norwood did some of their work as part of a school renovation project. So some of that work was paid for by the school renovation project, not the synthetic field itself, but the preparation of the field was paid partially by the project. So unfortunately, we don't have either of those situations where we have a benefactor or...
Have you gone to any of the large corporations, EMC, or have you gone to, I understand there's some grant money out there, the soccer associations, the NFL. I've heard, I haven't seen, actually I did see a couple articles that were listed online that there is available grant money. Do you have that option? Do you know of anyone who could do some grant writing so that it doesn't come strictly from the taxpayers? And are you willing to look for somebody to do the writing?
The grant writing is not a problem.
Absolutely.
We've been very successful in getting grants over the years. We've gotten about $25 million in grants over the last 20 years. So
So you're not opposed to
we're not
doing
opposed to
that?
No, we're not.
Never.
No, we're not.
Okay. Are you familiar with the grants that I just mentioned? The NFL, the soccer associations? There is grant money out there. Have you looked to some of the larger companies in the area?
We contacted Representative Linsky and Ross about the likelihood of a multi-million-dollar funding or grant from the state, and they said it was highly unlikely based on the budget situation now and in the foreseeable future. They did say that future small amounts like the $50,000 through Department of Conservation and Recreation, those types of grants that they kind of get out of a pothole account or a rainy day account, that they will continue to look for to help us. That'll probably be more beneficial on keeping user fees low and helping the maintenance function as opposed to the capital function.
And we'd be happy to follow up with any lead that anyone can provide us with grant opportunities.
Now, we have just a couple minutes left, or is there something you wanted to say, Andrea? Thank you.
Usually there has to be a project to which you're applying, that there's a project in the works that you apply for the grant, because generally people don't want to award grants if there is on a contingency that the rest of it has to be.
I understand that.
If this were to be a successful effort and a successful vote, we would explore any and every grant available in order to.
And just so they also know, we have reached out to local companies who are willing to help out on this, but the same thing is, right now, we'll help you out. What do you want, what would you like us to do? But there's no project. So it's kind of a
I know,
open-ended question.
It's a difficult situation.
Correct. Yeah.
We have a few minutes, probably 3. Is there anything that any of you would like to say that the voters might need to know about the proposal before town meeting, so that they may be yay or nay, but that you may have more supporters if...
I'd like to make a general observation that hasn't been discussed. There was some discussion earlier in one of your questions that you've been contacted by some folks who are concerned about the cost. What people don't see is the number of parents that have approached the Board of Selectmen and requested that the town look at this situation, that we look at the condition of the fields, that we look at the lack of playing space that is available for athletics. There were over 60 people in this room concerned about this issue about 2 years ago and met with the Board of Selectmen and demanded that the Board of Selectmen look into this issue. And that was the genesis, along with studies that were previously done with the school department. So there's a significant portion of the population that wanted the Board of Selectmen to look into this. The Selectmen responded by creating 2 committees and going through a 2-year study process, which resulted in the project that's before us now, and it's really up to the public to decide whether
Absolutely.
to go forward with it or not.
And I understand that, but you also understand those people who are those that approach you are those who have students and children in the school system. Those who seem to be not in favor of it either don't have the income to be able to support it or are of the older population. And our town is getting older, it's not getting younger. So I think that a lot of the voice that I've heard is from those who don't have children in the system and are wondering where the money is going to come from, especially when a lot of them are on fixed incomes or are unemployed. So I think that's some of the concerns. I know that this sounds like a wonderful proposal, and I'm certainly not trying to say that I'm not for it, but I also can't say that I am for it because it wouldn't be fair. I'm hoping to let the people know that are watching this to get the information that they need. Yeah.
And you bring up a very excellent point with respect to the users of the field, but we feel that improved fields benefits the town in general, as does, a lot of time when we were building the library, we're talking about the library, people said, I don't use the library anymore, I go online. And there's an overall community benefit. However, it's also the reason why we feel very strongly that there has to be an increased, that a portion of this has to be user fees. Who's using it and contribution there. Spectators, you're going to go, maybe there's gate receipts, we're going to use that as well. So we do recognize and understand that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I hope this information that you've provided has helped the community who's watching the show. I hope it's answered some of the questions that you've had. It certainly has answered many of my questions. There is a display of the proposed projects in front of the lobby of the town hall, and more information on the town website. If anyone has more questions, who was it that they should contact?
Right now, the Fields Committee does not have a contact telephone number, so we'd invite you to contact the Selectman's office, and that telephone number is 508-376-7040.
I many thanks to you all, and many thanks of you who are watching. And I certainly hope that this information does give you the information you need. I'd like to thank this committee for all the effort that you've put into this. It does not go unnoticed. I know that there are many who have seen it and appreciate it and value all the time and effort, and it has been volunteer. So I thank you for that. I wish you good luck at our town meeting. I will ask one more question, though. Would you romance the idea of not having it accepted at this town meeting so that you could be better prepared, perhaps, for the spring town meeting?
I don't think we would be better prepared. I think we are. I think we have the information. I think we are prepared, and we have the project. That's right.
Well,
I would close and ask that anybody look at this entire presentation, kind of walks you through the history of the need, the users, the increased demand, right through the debt, dollars and cents that Charlie mentioned per household, and the NBC study. But as somebody who thinks he qualifies now as older and not having any children in the school anymore, I'm 100,000% behind this project and think it's long overdue when you look at a track and field that has not been able to be used for 15 years. It is an asset to the town. It is something that all town residents can use. Yes, the users will pay for it, but that doesn't mean you can't go out and walk the track. You can't go out and still use the town park or play baseball or fly a kite. This is a town-wide approach, not one department, and it should have been done when the high school and the middle school was renovated 10 years ago, and maybe more funding could have been gotten, but the renovation of the school probably wouldn't have passed because it would have been too high a cost. So at $121 a household over 20 years on average, I think it's a pretty good bargain and cost effective.
Well, thank you very much. And once again, thank you very much for your efforts, and thank you for joining me at Millis After Dark. And I'd like to thank the viewers for joining in, and I hope that this has truly been informative for you.
Thanks, Joyce.
Thank you.